Hello, man. Hello, Mgtows. I mean, look at my sound. Oh, let me not forget today. Hello, man. Yeah, there we go. Sounds everything. Sounds good. Everything sounds good. Let me not forget today. Go your own way, Mgtows. Go your own way. I always forget which side it's on because that's or I can do it this way, but get centered here a little bit. Go your own way, Mgtow. Go your own way, and whatever way that is, just do it for yourself. It's Easter Sunday, so I figured I would talk a little bit about. I figured I'd talk about a little something that's probably important to Mgtow. It's apologetics. We get forced into the position of doing apologetics, and in Mgtow that comes in a lot of different ways, and I'll explain that today how we do it. And it's when I see it, it quite doesn't look right, and we have to address it. And I'll try to make this short. Hello, whoever's watching. If you're watching, then we'll talk about it. We're going to talk about presuppositional apologetics. A lot of people know apologetics from Christianity, and it's in defense of a higher figure, in defense of an unprovable higher figure, which is, along with when you have to defend an unprovable thing, you have to bring with yourself what's called presuppositional apologetics. Presuppositional apologetics is framing the narrative. So the argument is not a Socratic argument. It's about the presuppositions and the predeterminations of the theme of the argument. Religion does this in apologetics. Remove all the analogies that are not religious and imply that all the argument is religious. That's the presupposition to it. It's all this or not this. A presupposition means you have already formed a number of suppositions to consider it, which you would consider something to be true, and it doesn't have to be argued. There's no discourse about it. You just consider it to be true. Like I said, Christians do this with the existence of God. There's no argument there. Darwinism does it with the non-existence of God, I suppose. With just believe Darwin and everything. They'll say something like everything in evolution is true, so you don't have to prove it. No, you have to prove everything in life, and that's about Mgtow. A great example of a presupposition would be you'll get a fair trial, then you'll be executed afterwards. So there's presuppositions of guilt before that. In the argument that comes down from Mgtow, it's Mgtow is forced into the apologetics of, they'll come with such things like Mgtow's "you hate women." So the presupposition and the supposition of the argument is "you hate women," and then they'll go down from there. And what happens is it provokes an apologetic response, and that's where you get apologetics. I've seen this in Mgtow just recently, where one of the guys were a couple of those non-fake Mgtows, usually the POA brand, like Mgtow Dictionary, or the PUA LFA crowd with it usually comes from that, but they force us into some kind of silly apologetics. In the response, they say, "Oh, you guys, I don't hate women," and in that is a presupposition of hate. It's already been a predetermined narrative that you have no choice but to argue the narrative, in that they framed a narrative, which PUAs are really good at framing narratives. That's what they do when they manipulate girls into having sex. They're framing the narrative, so it's a presupposition of sex all the time. And I don't think they understand it in a linguistical terms, but what they do. But basically, they're just manipulating like little girls would. Little girls, many ways, are like little girls. They manipulate also. You shouldn't have to manipulate a person into anything. And apologetics is always a rhetorical device that's used to Rhetorical devices are used to gain your own agenda. And apologetics works that way, so that when they come with the argument, oh, all you Mgtows, you hate, and then we feel we have to defend ourselves and apologize for what is in their head. Obviously, they're thinking that, and coming from immature arguers or people that don't do discourse well, they want to frame it with a presupposition of, and that way the argument never veers from. The argument never veers from where they're comfortable with the argument at. There's a lot of different ways to look at it. I look at it myself. You can see it clearly when Christians do it or the PUAs do it. In Mgtow, it becomes a little more. It becomes a little more abnormal when you see it. And what I say is, don't apologize to these people. Don't even go down there. Reframe your argument. I would put it like this in that situation. They would say, "Oh, you Mgtows hate women." I would say, "Don't apologize in that reframe it. You say something like, you're assuming that this snake is worthy of respect or trust. Do you hate yourself so much that you're willing to get bit by a snake?" Which is, we all know who the snakes are, in that they trust so much they're willing to get bitten by that snake. That V, that split V. Let me go back for a minute and see if anybody's in and everything. Hello, Joey. Hello, Jeff. Hello, men. It's a Sunday morning. It's a nice Easter Sunday morning here, and I'm just talking about Christian apologetics, which rolls down into the traditional apologetics that's forced onto Mgtow. The traditional people are going to come and they're going to try to force apologetics on you. You're going to need to apologize for your position of being a Mgtow. And I know it's hard when you see these things. Apologetics are hard to identify. The trick of the presupposition is it's always about what these people want it to be about. Hence, it's about that. They hijack, they pre-hijack, and in certain terms and ideas, whether there's a truth relevance about it, and there is. And Bolin gave a good analogy of what apologetics is. George Boll and Bolin. I use Bolin logic and setting up my. Yes, I use Bowling logic when setting up controllers and stuff like that in electronics. And the Bowling logic on the apologetics would go A equals P to V if the sum of P and the V is Q. When VP is T, then V A T regardless of the value of Q. When V is P equals F, then V is A equals T, then regardless of the value of Q is, or the P to Q, the set variables occur with A. The set variables always go back to A. It's when A is P and Q, and P is A, and A is the valuation of P, i.e. VP or T or V. We can determine that the value of regardless is always going to reaffirm that the presupposition is A. That's the way George Boll would say. Bolin would say that's what a presuppositional logic is, or presuppositional apologetics. We do that when in this argument that Mgtows all hate these girls, and PUA is the way to go because they're willing to squash the bitches and do that. They're just out there squashing bitches, and that's the way to go. And that's just manipulation, and that's why the feminists would say manipulate. They're being manipulated. They'll get them drunk. They'll do things like that, and then that's rape. And then so PUAs are just rapists that are apologizing for their own bad behaviors, and they're split V begging, and it's always this paternal begging with them. But they put Mgtows in this position. Oh, you guys just hate women, and that's such a childish little. It's a childish little act that they do that can only come from like men that have sub 14 IQs or 14K IQs, or not 14K, 14-year-old. They have the IQs of 10-year-olds sometimes. I was just watching this thing on one of the Mgtows, the popular Mgtows, was hit with these things. He said, "Oh, Mgtows, you just hate women," and that, and he's like, automatically he went to apologetics. We Mgtows, accounting for all Mgtows, don't hate. And then he was speaking for all of the Mgtows. And I was thinking, oh, just stop it. You're just digging yourself a hole, because the argument is dealt with the presupposition of hate already. So you can't get away from that. You have to spin it back. And I would say, why do you hate yourself so much that you spin the hate back? It's like, why do you hate yourself so much that you're willing to be bitten by a snake to prove that a snake is a cute and cuddly beast? And that's the same thing with what we do with why do you hate women? Why are you willing to get bit? Why are you willing to go out there and tempt fate? There's a lot of Hindu analogies for this, and why you shouldn't play with snakes and scorpions. The scorpion and the alligator would be the best one. The scorpion can't get over the river, so he says, "Hey, alligator, just trust me. Trust me. Let me climb on your back and take you over, and then I'll give you a gift at the end of it." And the alligator goes, "Okay, I trust you." He gets on his back. He gets halfway across the river, and the scorpion stings him. And the alligator looks up and says, "Why do you do that?" And he goes, "Because I'm a scorpion." That's what scorpions do. We often in Mgtow, we say there's a gun in this room. There's this invisible gun, and the gun in the room would be represented by the sting of a scorpion, and they can pull it out anytime they want. And they have six. That gun is like a 6-shooter. It has 6 bullets, and they can choose whatever bullet they want to use on you. And we know this in Mgtow. We do these things in Mgtow. So we think about these things, and we think about the arguments. And I just want to say, I just wanted to come on and say, happy Easter, and whatever you're doing today, go your own way and do your own thing today. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how we do apologetics in Mgtow. And we have to become aware of it, because it's a situation where it's somebody else's agenda. It's not your agenda. You're just being apologetic for something that you shouldn't really be in. We're not hurting anybody in Mgtow. Mgtow is not hurting a person, a place, or a thing. It's not, no damage is coming from our idea. That goes with my ideas too. But in my ideas, I sometimes notice this even with myself. It's hard to catch. And when these asswads like Lazarus or Mgtow Dictionary come around, and they bring their traditional ways to us, and they start spurting out ad hominems at me. I'm 60 years old, 20 years removed from child raising, and that. And they start, "Oh, you're just a deadbeat dad," because I say I don't believe in fatherhood. Now I'm in the position when they make this presuppositional remark that comes with their agenda. What is their agenda? Their agenda is always the same. It's traditional agenda. It's the split V. It's squashing the bitches. That's what they want to do, and that's so horrible. What they're saying is they're just out and they're just manipulating girls, and they're raping them. And I don't care about. And that's why PUA gets accused of rape, and that's why what's his name? I can't remember his name. He gets accused of rape, because this is just manipulation. And if you're a man that needs to manipulate, see, I always say Hoka is right on some things. I'm right on some things. Hoka was listening to one day to me, and I tell my story about how I used to do it when I was young, how I used to do it when I was that, and it's contrary to the PUA. My techniques are very contrary, and most men, if you do it, you'll just notice that it works a lot better. I used to just put a suit jacket on, and I used to walk into the bar and order a coffee, and I'd get out the paper, and I would just lean back and just start reading the paper. And you know what that made me? I'm drinking my coffee. I get in occasional shot of Jameson's, and I would sit there and order another cup of coffee and read the paper. That makes me the most interesting guy in the room, because all the other jacktard PUAs are running around acting like asses, and usually insulting everybody around them. They're manning up. They're measuring each other's wieners. They're acting like jackasses, and most of the women see right through that, and they'll usually migrate towards the most interesting man in the room, and that's me. But in Mgtow, we have to deal with these ill-informed guys that are coming in this Mgtow dictionary. There's a new guy coming around. His name is Mgtow Dictionary, and he's such an idiot. He's been around Mgtow for like 6 months now, and he's writing the dictionary of Mgtow because he knows it all. And a dictionary of Mgtow is going to be like a PUA dictionary. He's coming after the old established guys like me that have been around for 20 years now in Mgtow, and was around at the original, when the Mgtow was conceived. I was in the original Mgtow group with Paco. Even, the PUAs have even tried to hijack that and say that they created it. No, they didn't create it. Paco created. It was Mgtow, and Paco went away, but that was in 2002. But these PUAs, they're narcissistic, and they're little boys. Their arguments often fail because they fail to have any sort of education at that time in their life. They're coming with no experience. So they try to do what's been taught to them their whole life. And what's been taught to them their whole life is Christian apologetics. How to trap somebody, how to do presuppositions, how to lie for a being that they say exists, which they have to give no proof for that argument. So they get very good at forcing other people to do apologetics through sin, and what they'll call sin. And it's like I said, it just in a way, it just makes it just works out for their agenda. It's always the presuppositions, and it's always the Mgtow is forced into apologetics for hating for this presupposition of hate, and it comes with a certain degree of disrespect. It comes with a certain degree of something that really doesn't make no sense, and it's just there's degrees of religion in it, and there's degrees of honor in it, and there's degrees of disrespect, and the analogies don't work. But as long as they frame it properly, you feel forced into arguing their argument. And like I said, don't trust a snake. Snakes bite. So I went down what George Bull would say, and that's the A to P to V to P to V to Q logic. And that's the presuppositional logic. There's loaded questions in these things too. Loaded questions and complex questions are which are questions that contain controversy or unjustified assumptions. It's an informal fallacy that depends on usage, such as questions as a rhetorical tool, but they're always loaded. In this Mgtow you hate thing, there's a loaded question of hate all the time, and we can explain it that way. There's a lot of different ways which this is going to come on, and I just say, don't argue these things with these clowns. They're going to use ad hominem attacks all the time. They're going to, hey, Mgtow, you guys aren't doing. In Mgtow Monk, we just say, we don't ask and we don't tell. We're not going to be those jackwads, PUAs that are sitting there telling about how many girls they smashed last night, and we know it's all bull, and we know it's all lies, and they're doing it because they need the validation of other men thinking that they're they're the alpha males in a room, but really most of them are just like this Mgtow dictionary. He's like, he doesn't show himself. He's a Chicano. He's about 5'9" maybe. He's he's got very big daddy issues. He's probably a little bit, a little bit off, mentally. He feels he needs to make up for it. And he never comes on and argues. He never shows. He's just an always ad hominem attack to the Mgtow. And it's supposed to Mgtow, the presupposition of Mgtow is you're supposed to be a PUA just out there smashing it, which is so immature. It's like college frat boy Mgtow. And he's talking to some of the more established Mgtows like myself that have been around for 20 years doing this. And so he's the new high-pitched salesman on the street. He's going to sell you something, and it's usually his idea or his book, which you can start donating to. And his product right now is the Mgtow, the malformed Mgtow dictionary, because if it's coming from that mind is only going to warp your mind if you listen to this guy. Like I said, they always use rhetorical tools. They'll use shame. They don't even have enough dignity in Mgtow not to use shame and code red shaming, because they're acting like little girls. Their logic comes from girl logic. Their logic comes from implied direct replies to the question that serves his agenda. That's how they've learned how to argue. It's the Christian argument of apologetics. It's always God is perfect. And I get this with some of the guys too. God is perfect and God created us, but he left us with this free will argument. He didn't know at the time he was leaving us with free will. So he's not responsible for humans being evil, or he's just like a hidden God that's not responsible for humans for human horrible humans and evil humans, malformed humans and all that stuff. He's not responsible because you got free will. That's the apologetics and that, there's a presupposition in their argument of free will, which is just ridiculous. He's not responsible for that. You did that to yourself. That's what you hear. If you just would have worked harder, if you just would have suffered more, it would be something you did. It could never be that the world is a cruel, harsh place, and sometimes no matter how hard you try, it fails. And no matter what you think about a woman, she has her own mind and she's going to do it because of sexual crypsis. You're just in a losing situation with that, and you should never put yourself in that situation of being a father with these sea hags, because it's just going to come back to bite you, and that's what we're talking about. To bite, remorse. To bite again is the Latin remorse. That we leave them remorseful. To bite again, and in our society, it's a very polygamous society when it comes to female, which is polyandry, because they move from Jimmy to Chad to Bill to Tyrone, and they have 4 baby mamas, which is a very polygamous thing. But for men, that's not an option. You have to be a father. You have to be the Christian value standard of a father. And even if you don't know if it's your children, if you're your child, you still got to be a stand-up guy, and do, or else you're not part of their man society. And I find that to be really ridiculous, being a large male myself, always being a good-looking male in my life, which I, done well and everything. I find that these people are just ridiculous. These PUAs were just, they're just those little simp boys running around searching for the split V all the time and like ready to, I'm going to fight you. And you're like, get out of here. Look at me. You're not going to fight me. You can't fight me physically. You can't fight me mentally. You can't fight me intellectually. So they stand behind avatars here on, like the Mgtow dictionary is what she should call himself, because he's such a dick. But they come around and they hide behind the avatars and they do the common trolling stuff. And usually with their common trolling, there's going to come with some sort of presuppositional apologetics that he's going to try to force you into. And you really got to get attuned to what you're seeing. I do a while back. It was probably a year ago. There was that "Throw It on the Ground" song. To throw it, I threw that on the ground, and it was funny, but there's a certain amount of logic in that. There's this part where he's walking through this festival, and his girlfriend's phone rings, and she goes, "It's your dad," and there's that casual cruelty in there that I was talking about. The statement comes with some presupposition of casual cruelty that the dad is it's your dad. And she hands him the phone. He looks at the phone and he goes, "My dad ain't a phone." And I throw it on the ground. He smashes the phone. And I thought that was the funniest thing because he recognized the bit of in there some truth. He recognizes the bit of casual cruelty that was coming, and she runs away. And he's like, "I threw that on the ground." And but in that, he did recognize the rhetorical scheme that she was trying to play. She was trying to manipulate, and he wouldn't let. He's hypersensitive to being manipulated in that way. And I think Mgtows should get hypersensitive to be manipulated in that way. If someone tries to tell you your dad is a phone, that's just improper logic. But that's the way it's going to come. It's going to come and trick. A weaker person would have just grabbed the phone and say, "Hey, Dad, I know you're not a phone," but I mean, she was just being casually cruel, and that's the thing that was important to it. There's a certain amount of intent with these things, and the intent is how do they put it there? It's an assumption that comes with a bit of presumption of guilt in there. There's an a controversial assumption. That's an unjustified assumption. She was making an unjustified assumption. That's what they do when they come at me. Lazarus comes at me with, because you don't believe in fatherhood. I'm 20 years removed from that shit. I'm almost 60 years old, by the way, and I still mountain bike. And back in the day, I would have, if we'd done this in person, I would have just stomped them in the head, because these weak people, both Lazarus and this Mgtow dictionary, both hide behind the avatars because they're afraid to show their form, so they can do these rhetorical schemes on us. And the rhetorical schemes often just come with these blazing bits of apologetics attached to them, where you feel a need to apologize. Christian apologetics is the same way. I picked a topic today because it is Easter, and I want to say, men, go your own way, and learn to identify some of these things. Because otherwise, you're going to be at the will of traditionalism. You're going to be at the will of the PUAs, always coming with their little schemes that have horrible agendas attached to them. If you want to learn more about it, just go read George Bull's. He explains very well, and I know that would be over the head of most PUAs. It would be over the head of like guys like Lazarus. Consider the examples, the P to Q logic when you're doing this, and try to learn what P to Q logic is. Like I said, if the example is A to P to V, sum of equals P to V to Q, it's always apologetics. No matter how you do it, it just reaffirms the presupposition of A. Duh. So don't get into argument where hate is the presupposition of A. No matter how you argue it, it's not going to work out. And that's what I wanted to talk about. And I wanted to come around today and just say hello. and hey man, I hope you're having a good day. I'm putting my new forks on my. I had to do on my mountain bike, my electric mountain bike, and so I had to do a new fork change. So I had to do new headset gears. I had to do new cabling. I had to recable and everything. When you do a little thing, it usually starts working out into this world is, you thought you were going to get away with that little job. It's like plumbing. And before you know it, you've replumbed the whole thing. That's what fixing a bike is like, fixing anything, a car. We all have these situations where we pre-assumed that we were just going to put this little part on, and this part turned into this thing, and this, you had to take off this, and you needed to buy new seals, and you needed to buy, and it became a huge job. That's what PUAs make life into. They make life into a huge job where the truth of the matter is, be the most interesting guy in if you're still doing that, and I don't care if you're doing it not, I don't want to talk about it with these guys. I don't want to have to explain to these guys that they're and I don't want to hear about their exploits. In Mgtow monk is a don't ask, don't tell. But if you're just going to do that and you're a young guy and everything, just be the most interesting guy in a room and they'll come to you. And you don't have to do any lies, no manipulations, all that stuff just leads you down this road. Well, they'll start manipulating you. You'll start manipulating them. You're going to end up with a kid and she's going to run down to Health and Human Service. You're going to follow her down, Jimmy, you're Jimmy now in my Jimmy and Chad analogy, and you're going to be begging for your enslavement. Dick brain. Stop begging for your enslavement from a traditional system. Because you get into these stupid arguments that are far over your head. Oh, But using logic in today's world of millennials and instant gratification on the internet and a million TV shows which don't make no sense today, sitting down and actually learning Boolean logic would take some of these moronic PUAs the rest of their life to make it through one book, because basically they're the slow bros. They're not the Mgtows. They're the slow bros over here that we have to coach along and we have to bring them up to Mgtow standards, but they're always wanting that V and they're always begging. They're always white knighting and they're always using shaming language, throwing out ad hominems. And this goes on a long way. Some of the best Mgtows that were considered the best been exposed for their traditionalism, their traditional conservative stances on things, where they're unwilling to learn new things. We just had that with Lazarus, that he's unwilling to learn. He's unwilling to take his Mgtow farther because he wants to stay in that special spot where PUAs and MRAs live in la la land, and they believe in the traditional ways and the fantasy fiction land, like I've explained in so many videos, and came out with so many. They want to live in that fantasy fiction land that isn't real. It's all made up in their head. And the PUA, they're out living in that fantasy fiction lane. They're out squashing the women. They're like, woo, and I did 2 last night. No, you didn't. You're a liar and you're a braggart, and you probably insulted 2 girls or tried to manipulate and rape 2 girls. And I can see that as more logic than these irritating little boys just humping on anything around them and pretending like they're the big men in the room, because all they got is these yapping little bumblebee mouths. They're the little bumblebee analogy. They're just flying around the real men like us and trying to sting us. And the smallest guy in a room is usually like that, and that's why they never show themselves. They just use the avatars, but they got big mouths that keep going, but their brains are real little too. And that's all I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about these PUAs / Mgtow dorks, these traditionalists that bring their only argument comes from a brand of apologetics that they learned in their traditional conservative Catholic schools or wherever they went to. And the overlap of religious, I was watching this thing from this jackass last night, and he brought on the religious overlaps on everything was just phenomenal. And they're living in this fantasy fiction world where there's this God that he's so perfect, but he doesn't have to take accountability for anything. That sounds more like a woman God. And their woman God is a split V God. Like I said, there's only two possibilities, that Mary and Joseph thing. There's only two possibilities. A, she was raped, or two, she was cheating. And that's the only possibilities in this world. Come to grips with that, and then they honor it. They have to do so much apologetics in Christianity. It's almost impossible for them to navigate this world so they become slaves. And that's the world they choose to live in for one reason, the split V. It doesn't take all that much, man. Don't listen to those jackasses. If you're going to buy a book, buy the Trav book. I'll tell you what, get a newspaper, a cup of coffee, put on a suit and sit at the end of the bar and don't run your mouth. You'll be the most interesting guy in the room. And with that, I'm going to sign out. Always be the most interesting guy in the room, whether you're a Mgtow, whether you're an MRA, whether you're a PUA or anything like that. Always remember there's risk involved with these things, and that risk comes with your slavery. And you're not having a baby, she is. You're just going to become the ATM and have to provide. And that's where their suppositional logic leads. Man up and provide. Suffer with the rest of us. No, Mgtow is not going to suffer with you jackwads. What a bunch of morons. Someday this world will grow up and become more like me. Someday girls will get accountability and responsibility, and that only means they'll be moving farther away from their dependence on traditional conservatism. And that's going to piss these guys off. But that's the argument you hear from them. We're so mad because the feminists are moving farther away from us. Boo-hoo. You jackasses. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Because then you don't have to take care of them. But they'll argue that deadbeat dads and welfare moms thing, and which is just garbage, and all those stats come from Health and Human Services, which reaffirms the slavery of men. It comes from that traditional conservative mindset that we've had for the last 100 years here that we're trying to dispel. You're not having a baby. If you're a dude, there's no way you can have it. You're not biologically inclined to have a baby. She is, and it's her decision. But she will manipulate you to have to pay for it because, well, they're having a little problem with that accountability thing. And that's what you need to explain. And with you, Mgtows, and with us men, you have to become responsible, accountable for yourself, and develop an actual personality. Read a book and learn. That's all I got to say. And I know this is going to rub a lot of those traditional conservative alt-righters, Christian followers. I don't care what you call them. They're idiots. But they will come with these presuppositional apologetic things. You have to think about it and turn it back to them. Say, why do you hate yourself so much that you would let a snake bite you? And that's all I wanted to say today. Go your own way, men. Let me do it right way. Go your own way. And like always, thanks for being Mgtows. Mgtow.